Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to The Main Phase, a Magic the Gathering podcast aimed to bring you the best content, period. My name is Dboe, and this week, Jeremy and I discuss Throne of Eldraine and some awesome brews that we're coming up with. Stay tuned.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to The Main Phase, the only Magic the Gathering podcast who's soon to be giving away tons of free loot on the stream. I am Jeremy, and I am joined today by...
Dboe.
Dboe's here.
Yep, and it's great to be here. It's been a long weekend, and we've been having spoilers coming out.
I mean, we are in... Dude, we're just like... in the thick of spoiler season right now.
Yep.
Right. There are a number of spoilers that I am super excited about. I've actually got an article that's going to be coming out regarding one of the decks, and I'm going to steer away from that a little bit just so I can post that article on the deck list because it has been winning, just winning, and it's rooted in aggro. Stay tuned for that. I'm going to actually post it out before you even have an opportunity to listen to this podcast. So you will have seen it by the time you hear it, and I do hope you enjoy it. It'll be one of the ones that I play in that first week, but I think that Dboe and I had actually committed to doing some brews, kind of just talking about decks that are coming up, the changes, the rotation, of course, brings up new possibilities, new things for us to explore with one another, all kinds of options. So why don't you just take it away, Dboe? Let us know and take us right into one of the brews that you're currently working on, and let's get some spitballing going.
Sure. So one of my favorite cards that's been spoiled recently was actually a red enchantment. And people probably have a guess of what this one is, but it's Fires of Invention. It's 3 in a red. Like I said, it's an enchantment. It says you can cast spells only during your turn, and you can cast no more than 2 spells each turn.
Is it a trap?
Well, let's listen to the second half of this.
Okay, sure.
Go ahead. Yeah. And it says you may cast spells with converted mana costs less than or equal to the number of lands you control without paying their mana costs.
Fuegos de la Invención.
Yep. So you get to pay 4 mana, and then in that same turn can cast another spell for free, so long as you have 4 lands and a 4-drop or less in your hand, right? The next turn, if you hit your land drop, you play it. You can then play 2 5-mana spells for free on your turn, leaving your mana completely open. So when people take a look at this, they're thinking, well, maybe this is a trap. And I know that's something that you and I were definitely looking at when we were first taking a look at this stuff. You know, it kind of feels that way a little bit. But if you really take a look at it, I think that we could have some really interesting plays. For instance, the shell that I've been looking at with this deck is actually a Jeskai Prison Mill deck.
Okay.
So
I like where that's going.
So what's really interesting with this is how can you break this, right? You can't cast spells on your opponent's turn. You can only cast spells on your turn. You're only relegated to 2 spells on your turn. And it leaves your mana completely open. So you need to have something like a mana sink to be able to make use of your mana since you're going to be drawing it anyways, right? And then you also need to have something to kind of even the playing field and maybe make it to where the detriment of the deck, of this particular card, where you can only cast 2 spells, is also affecting your opponent. And how we would do that is by playing spells like Deafening Silence, which is a new one from Throne of Eldraine.
Yeah.
Or Rule of Law.
Okay.
So Rule of Law is a 3-mana enchantment.
So multiple options there for those white enchantments to be able to get to that aspect of the lockdown.
Right. And so basically what Rule of Law does, for those who don't know, it's 3 mana. It's a white spell. It says players can't cast more than 1 spell each turn. And then you have Deafening Silence, which says each player can't cast more than 1 non-creature spell each turn. So you kind of have a redundancy there in that type of an effect. And then since Fires of Invention already prevent you from casting more than 2 spells in a turn, basically you're just turning that off just a little bit, but you're also extremely hampering your opponent to where they can only cast 1 spell per turn. So what we would end up playing with this enchantment is something like Folio of Fancies. And basically what that spell does, it's a new one from Throne of Eldraine, and it's 1 in a blue for an artifact, and it says pay X and tap it.
Nice. Okay.
And then each player draws X cards.
I see where you're going with this.
And then 2 in a blue and tap it, and then each opponent mills the top of their library equal to the number of cards in their hand. And what's the kicker is, the spell also gives each player no maximum hand size. So you play Rule of Law, they're only relegated to playing 1 spell per turn. So are you, sort of. And then you start forcing everybody to draw cards over and over and over again, and then you start milling them out for 10, 11, 12. And it's one of those things where you can quickly mill them out. They can't play their hand. You kind of built your own arcane laboratory. And then on top of that, you can play something like board wipes to keep their creatures off the field. You can play something like the Baby Teferi to keep them from playing things on your turn.
That's awful.
So now they're only playing one spell per turn, just like you. But
on their turn.
On their turn.
Right.
They're using their mana resources, and you are not, allowing you to continually activate your artifacts and things like that to get continual advantage.
And in a deck like this, where after rotation, all you have is Rampage of the Clans and Planar Cleansing to be able to wipe all artifacts and enchantments from the board, that sounds incredibly effective.
And don't forget, they also just printed March of the Mantis.
Yeah.
Which is X blue and white, which kind of fits in the same color scheme. And it says pay X mana, return X artifacts or enchantment spells from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then if X is 6 or more, they become 4/4 creatures. And it's at instant speed.
Sure.
So now if they happen to blow up all of your pieces of your puzzle, right?
Yep.
You can all of a sudden just pay 4 mana and get back each of your important spells from your graveyard to the battlefield, forcing them to still play by your rules, and you're slowly dealing with their stuff. You can play your removal spells and things like that for free and still activating all of your mill stuff.
Beautiful.
I think it's a really fun strategy, and that's one of the shells around this red enchantment that I think could be really good. The other way you could go about it is playing something like Kinrith the Return King, which is the Buy a Box promo.
Cool, I like that.
And you can go something like Mardu with it or whatever. Basically, if you're filling your graveyard with stuff, you can play him for free, and then it automatically gives you all of your mana to be able to activate any of his abilities that are on him. So you can pay red to give all creatures haste. You can play 1 in a green to put a +1/+1 counter on something. 2 in a white to gain 5 life. 3 in a blue for a player to draw a card. Or 4 in a black to return something from the graveyard to the battlefield.
Because why not?
So now you can kind of circumvent that 2 mana or that 2 spell per turn restriction by playing things from your hand. So you hit your 2 spells, and then you have all your mana available, so you can start returning big things from your graveyard. So you're really getting back 3 spells or 4 spells. Right. So it's kind of like a fun way you can build it around that way as well.
You could even build in Chromatic Lantern for some of that as well. If you wanted to, you could go Saheeli Sublime Artificer and kind of turn this into a little bit of a Jeskai Walkers package, which is still completely relevant.
Yep.
At the top end of the curve, you could hit Sarkhan and use your Planeswalkers as combat damage. You got all kinds of options. And really, the effective way to circumvent the lock of 1 spell per turn is to resolve a spell that has activated abilities and then is effectively like you're casting spells anyway through your Planeswalkers. Right. There's a lot of really great stuff that can be done there. Dovin's still in the mix, and Dovin can get things done for you. There is a great deal to be done with a deck like that, and I challenged you to be able to find a use for Fires of Invention. I was the one who was originally calling it a trap card, and that seems really effective. Really, really good stuff. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. Initially, when I see rotation coming, I kind of start to dive into black decks, right? Look at all the cards that took place historically around rotations. And I'm only going to go back the last 5 or 6 years or so. But Thoughtseize, right around rotation as Theros came out. Pack Rat, again, right as Ravnica came out. Pack Rat was real big. People were using it everywhere. Gate Crash, when that happened, we had Night Veil Spectre. That card was running rampant. It's all mono-colored stuff. Desecration Demon, Grey Merchant of Asphodel came out in Theros, Heroes Downfall again in Theros during rotation, all these new cards, right? And it got me thinking about how good mono black is actually going to be after rotation. And we've already been experimenting with mono black a little bit. And the first real brew that I'm looking at, let's face it, we're losing some big staples there. We're losing Cast Down, we're losing Ravenous Chupacabra, we're losing Vraska's Contempt, but there's a lot of really good cards that are already in black that are staying as well. Knight of the Ebon Legion is staying. Legion's End, which is going to take over and be rampant. That's going to be everywhere till M20 rotates. Spawn of Mayhem. We can find a lot of use for Spawn of Mayhem. Dread Presence. That card is a little engine all by itself in mono black. Cavalier of Night, that card's staying. That deserves a spot, arguably, in mono black. Liliana at the top of the curve in the Dread Horde General. I know we're losing the Cabal Stronghold, but does it matter? And the answer's probably not. And then we start looking at other cards from mono black that are coming as I'm talking about brewing here. Stay with me. This is kind of a ramp, but Order of Midnight for a colorless and a black for that 2/2 flyer. It can't block, right? It's a human knight. and it's got the Alter Fate, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand as the sorcery speed adventure on it. Murderous Rider is going to be everywhere. Basically, the new hero's downfall, destroy a...
The card is so good.
It is incredible. It's incredible. Just in that list that I posted before the podcast this week, it is the little engine that could Oathsworn Knight and mono black.
Amazing.
Disgustingly good card for a colorless and 2 black. Comes in as a 4/4. It goes to combat every turn, sure, but when it takes damage, you remove a +1/+1 counter. Instead of it taking lethal damage, you prevent that damage.
And we potentially also have something like Proliferate as well in the format to keep pumping it up if need be. But
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there are ways to put +1/+1 counters on things, okay? And it doesn't have to be just mono black, but I'm thinking of some of these things. Like, what about a Yara, the first of Lochthwain, that elf noble, right? It was 3 black for a 2/3. Whenever a Yara, first of Lochthwain, or another black creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. And that gets me thinking about these really silly combos, okay? Like Cauldron Familiar, you know that uncommon for 1 black? It's the 1/1 cat.
Right, yeah.
Says you can sacrifice a food token and it brings it back. Well, combo that with a Yara and Witch's Oven and tap the Witch's Oven to bake the cat and make a food and then sacrifice the food and bring the cat back. You've just got a transfer of 2 life right there.
Yep.
And it happens over and over and over again. And you start to get into these really weird things. And if we're still talking about mono black here, Rankle, Master of Pranks, that card is ridiculous. First of all, if I can sacrifice a food token and bring back a card that I just discarded, which is the Cauldron Familiar, and then just do it again and be swinging in every turn with Rankle, great stuff. And Clackbridge Troll. That card, I don't know if people realize how effective that is, but Trample Haste, I know it's 5 to resolve and 8/8, and when it enters, you create 3 sheep tokens, or your opponent creates 3 sheep tokens. They're going to run out of sheep tokens.
Right.
And there's nothing saying that you can't get rid of those sheep tokens right from the get-go, and here comes an 8/8 beater, right?
Yep.
Mono Black's got me really interested. I think that may be a brew. Guaranteed is going to be a brew coming down the pipe, but I still think that there's some great things. Not to mention 3 sorcery cards I just want to touch on in mono black before I give you the floor back here. But Spectre Shriek for 1 black, target opponent reveals their hand.
That card is amazing.
It is amazingly good.
And I'm kind of calling it the next Thoughtseize, even though it probably isn't technically as good as Thoughtseize. But whenever I say it to people, they go like, "What? No, the card's awful." It's actually not.
It's not awful.
The reason why is because what the key word that they are missing in there is may. So 1 black, target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a non-land card from it.
That's right.
You don't have to choose anything. So
that's right.
So if you have an issue where you play this on turn 1 and they're not playing a black deck and none of the things that they have in their hand are really going to be that bad for you, you can easily take care of it later. You just had a 1 mana peak. I mean that's you had peak.
That's right.
That's fine. Like that's not a bad thing. You don't have to choose a thing at all. So, so basically that's a 1 mana peak, right? Like that's peak. That's not a bad card. People play peak in modern sometimes. And also if you have the situation where you do play this in turn 1 and they are playing a non-black deck and there's something that's really detrimental to your game plan, you have the option of being able to exile a card from your hand to be able to get that card. Right?
It is completely worth dropping a totally inconsequential card from your hand to remove the core exile,
right,
the core aspect of your opponent's combo and potentially the reason that they kept the hand. Okay.
Right.
And it's an uncommon. It's going to be in a lot of packs. It's going to be a useful card. And in mono black, it is a golden sideboard card. And it fits right in there with Duress.
Another thing, too, to think about is you can actually use Spectre Shriek to your advantage. So remember, we still have Karn in the format, the
Correct.
new Karn, and he can pull artifacts from exile.
That's correct.
You don't have to exile a black card with this.
That's exactly what I'm thinking of here is that, look, a card that's staying around after rotation is Chromatic Lantern. Do you remember how Karn Lantern kind of caught on for a little bit? Mono Black Lantern caught on for a little bit? There is no reason that can't still be potentially a really nasty thing that's going on.
Or even a blue-black or Esper artifacts list could run something like this as well. Because, again, you have that Karn that can animate artifacts and also pull things from your sideboard or exile. And you even have a finisher like the blue-black Tezzeret that is still staying in the format. So you could play this on turn 1, exile a larger artifact that you can't cast right away anyways to get rid of their best thing. You get down Karn, you can then search for that larger artifact out of exile, put it back in your hand when you need it later. So there's things that you can be playing with this spell to just open the door for you if you build it in the right shell. And even if you just build it in a mono black list or a Rakdos list or something like that, it's still a decent card for you.
It's a great card.
Yeah.
Another sorcery that I'm really excited about, it maybe even just a limited capacity, but I don't know. Removal is going to be a little spotty. Red's going to have a good amount of removal. White actually still has some good removal options. Liliana's Triumph, Gideon's Triumph, both cards that I expect to see fully come into use. A lot of the Triumph spells, frankly. I'm getting off course here, but Reeve Soul for a colorless and a black at sorcery speed, destroy target creature with power 3 or less. And a limited capacity, maybe a constructed capacity if we need that kind of thing, right? But Epic Downfall. One colorless and a black, exile target creature with converted mana cost 3 or greater at sorcery speed. I know, again, maybe a limited card, and generally, yes, a limited card, but there are uses for a card like that post-rotation because the potential or the field of usage is so much slimmer.
Agreed.
Right? And people are going to be top-ending bombs. It's going to be top-ending bombs. And it says, follow me, exile. Not destroy. Exile. There goes your Yarick. There goes your Chulane. There goes whatever. Exile a creature with converted mana cost 3 or greater. Either way, mono black definitely coming. Dread Presence probably at the head of that, but I'm excited about it.
Another thing with Ayara as well is that she also fits in that Mardu reanimation style aristocrats type of list that we've been seeing around.
Yeah.
And because she's a free sack outlet. Right?
She
now,
is.
She's not a repeatable sack outlet.
No.
You can only do it once every time she untaps.
Doesn't matter.
But it's still free. You don't have to pay mana for it. So you can play her, get your sacrifice outlet from her, get your sacrifice effects. We still have Teysa Orzhov or Teysa Karlov in the format as well. So you can double up the death effects. We have things like Opportunistic Dragon.
And Afterlife becomes a real thing here.
Right.
Okay. A big thing.
Imagine this, JB. We have Opportunistic Dragon in the format
with
right
the
now.
treasure tokens.
No, we get to steal our opponent's.
Oh, that's right. The 4-drop.
They choose target human or artifact an opponent controls. And so it's probably a sideboard card if humans gets real big. You can play it, steal their thing, use Aurelia, whatever her name is, to tap and sacrifice their best thing.
Yep.
It goes to the graveyard. You get the death effects. It seems all hunky-dory,
It
right?
does seem great, actually. Seems fantastic. What else are you looking at in terms of brews, Dboe?
So another thing that I've been really looking at, I've just been cheesing over this card, is Gadwick the Wizened. This card...
Everybody's playing him right now in an Is It shell.
Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily think Is It maybe the right answer for it. There's other things that we could be playing.
There's cause for Big Blue with Gadwick.
I mean, you could play Zempo. We also have a Simic Flash deck that has a lot of surviving pieces to it that this could fit right into. And if you tweak it in just the right way, you can. This is amazing in this style, in that style of a list.
Oh, dude, with the Brineborn Cutthroat specifically, think about being able to flash in a Brineborn Cutthroat with a Resolved Gadwick and tap down their only blocker, and then bring in the damage. It's pretty bad. It's scary.
So for those who don't know what Gadwick does, it's X blue, blue, blue. It's a legendary creature, and it says whenever it enters the battlefield, draw X cards. So also that works really well with Yarick right now.
Yeah, it does.
Because it's an ETB effect.
Yes.
So if you pay 5 mana for him, you draw 2 cards, but if Yarick's set, you draw 4 cards, which seems really good too. It's also in the same colors. But in these like blue-green lists or mono blue lists, it also has that ability whenever you cast a blue spell. Doesn't matter if it's creature, doesn't matter if it's an artifact, doesn't matter if it's an instant or sorcery.
Blue spell.
Blue spell.
Cast trigger.
Yep. Tap target non-land permanent. An opponent controls. So that could also be important as well. You could tap down their vehicle or their other artifact that could be important to them that they can only activate at sorcery speed or whatever.
Sure.
So if you play this in like a mono blue list, we do also have the ley lines in the format. We have Leyline of Anticipation.
Yes, we do.
Which then allows you to play him at instant speed. So at the end of your opponent's turn, you're like, great, I'm going to pay 5 mana, cast him on your turn.
Dude, the direction you're going is like Big Blue.
Right.
You're going Big Blue. Honey Bunches of Nope.
Yep, Honey Bunches of Nope. You draw 2 cards. You now have a thing that can start tapping down their things. You play a bunch of other things that add instant speed. An Opt will tap down their soul blocker or their soul attacker. So it's things like that to really consider with Gadwick. But if you go blue-green with it, we also not only have a Leyline of Anticipation. We also have the green Vivian, which sure doesn't trigger Gadwick, but does give him flash, right?
Yeah.
That 2 and a green creature spells you cast can be casted at instant speed.
Love it.
And then you also have probably the best mythic so far, or at least in standard so far before this has released, Hydroid Krasis.
Sure.
So now you have 2 creatures that can enter the battlefield.
I don't think it's gonna drop in power either in terms of rotation. I think it just gets better, unfortunately. I hate to say it,
but now you have 8 cards, 8 creatures that you could theoretically cast at instant speed with Leyline of Anticipation and that Vivian.
And you're going big Nissa here, right? You're going Who Shakes the World with this.
You could.
You have to, almost, I think.
You absolutely could. In any case, you're still instant speed, drawing cards, getting a creature, right?
Gaining life, doing the thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you just keep going through with it, and then you're able to play. You already have all the other things in that type of a list.
Yeah.
You can cast at instant speed, like you have Frilled Mystic, which is surviving rotation. It counters a spell. It also will tap something down.
Since we're on the topic of Simic, and I love where you're going with this, let's also encourage the people who listen to the podcast to explore the implications of Biomancer's Familiar after rotation. Being able to decrease the costs of cards isn't specifically just an adapt thing. And with a new set, we don't know how useful that may be just yet, and I guarantee you that it'll be useful in terms of...
I mean, imagine that even with Kinraith.
Yeah, it's perfect. That's exactly what I'm saying, is being able to get 2 or a 4 reduction on certain things is really powerful. But Simic Flash, I don't think really going anywhere, only getting better.
Right.
At some point.
I think especially if you can tweak it in just the right way to make use of all the tempo
but
plays.
Big
and things
Blue,
like that.
brother, you're right there. Fairy formation, you've got Jace, you've got Tezzeret, you got artifacts.
Even imagine casting this at instant speed, Stolen by the Fae.
Perfect.
X blue. It is technically a sorcery.
It is.
But if you cast this at instant speed, return target creature with converted mana cost X or less to its owner's hand. So you can technically target your Gadwick.
Yes.
Right? You now know exactly how much you need. It's 5 mana, return Gadwick. And then you get 3 1/1 blue fairy creature tokens with flying.
Yeah.
So you can build around Gadwick. You can build around all of this, return them to your hand.
I think people are going to be building around Gadwick.
Right.
That's a card with just too much power. Well, no, maybe not too much power, but it's powerful. What's the toughness on Gadwick? 3?
3. He's a 3/3.
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah, 3/3
so
for 3.
Good. That card is really, really good. While we're on the topic of Yarick, and you had mentioned it just a second ago, and I appreciate you. Were you done with Gadwick?
Yeah.
Okay, so another one that's really just been kind of eating at me. I've got an initial list here, but it's built around using the Sultai Elemental package, but also going crazy with food in Oko Thief of Crowns. Starting off in the beginning of the curve with a Gilded Goose, into Leafkin Druid, or maybe holding the Leafkin Druid back, but just pressing for the Risen Reef. And one of the things in testing this deck, or at least just doing test draws of this deck, was it feels weird to be putting a token into play that I'm not sacrificing for mana. Because we've been on the treasure train so long that now with food, I'm thinking to myself that that's a way for me to expedite what I'm doing. And there still is. With Gilded Goose, I can sacrifice a food and add a mana of any color. But Risen Reef is its own little engine. I think it's still a scary little engine. When you include cards like Yarick, Leafkin Druid, you've got enough elementals there to really make something of this. But I feel like Vraska Golgari Queen and Oko Thief of Crowns is absolutely outstanding with one another. Those two planeswalkers work so incredibly well with one another. Vraska being able to uptick and sacrifice a permanent you control to gain a life and draw a card is getting rid of the food tokens. Oko has the ability to completely stonewall any of your opponent's creatures. It is a total stonewall. And Vraska, in the event that Vraska is able to get to, on her +2, the -9, to where a creature of yours needs to deal damage for the emblem, Oko just adds so much clutter to that. And it was really like the first time that I've tested with Oko to see how powerful he was. And I came up against white-black Pridemates with Sorin and Ajani and all of that. And it was a complete stonewall by turning everything my opponent had into a 3/3 elk and having an active Yarick, which is a 3/5 Death Touch lifelinker. It was a total stonewall for our opponent. And I'm generating tremendous amount of food tokens. And I want to run that new card that you've been kind of geeking over, Giant Opportunity, which is the sorcery for 2 colorless and a green, says sacrifice 2 foods, put a 7/7 giant into play, otherwise create 3 food tokens.
What I really like about that spell, too, is that the sacrificing of the food tokens is on resolution, not on cast.
That's right.
So it says, basically, if this spell resolves,
right,
you may choose to either sacrifice
You can do one of these 2 things.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's not an additional cost to the spell.
Exactly.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. So if it resolves, you get an additive benefit either way. You either get the 7/7, which is great, right? Yep. We want the 7/7. But the reason I'm building around this, and I've also got cards, that new uncommon Savvy Hunter in there, right? Which is the one colorless, one black, one green for a 3/3. And whenever it attacks or blocks, you create a food token and you can sacrifice 2 foods and draw a card. So more draw a card, more draw a card. But the 4 main cards and the main purpose of the deck is the Wicked Wolf, the new Bristling Hydra. Right?
I knew that card was good.
We had one in Kaladesh, the Bristling Hydra. When it comes into play, you create some energy. You've been creating energy all the way through with the Bristling Hydra. Wicked Wolf comes into play. It immediately fights. It doesn't say that you can sacrifice only 1 food token. So when you have an active Yarok with a Wicked Wolf in play and you have 4 or 5 food on the board and the Wicked Wolf comes down, it fights 2 creatures. You sacrifice all your food. It fights and kills your opponent's 2 best creatures and you've got a tap 9/9 sitting right there waiting for the next turn. It is cataclysmic how good this is. And we're only 170 some cards into the set right now in terms of spoilers. And that deck in terms of food efficiency is only going to get better. Another one that I think is incredible for food. And I'm sorry, I'm on a tangent right now. I'm kind of pumped by this, but Trail of Crumbs for a colorless and a green and an enchantment. When it comes into play, you create a food token. And whenever you sacrifice a food token, you could pay 1 colorless. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, reveal a permanent and put it into your hand and put the other one on the bottom of your library.
Basically a draw card.
It is obnoxious. And with a Yarok, 2 tokens. 2 tokens. It is just awesome. This deck, the combination of Sultai Elementals and Yarok and food is going to get crazy. And I'll post this deck list once I've honed it in, once you've helped me kind of tune, get a little sideboard going. We'll play test a little bit, but we'll get this one out there for public consumption as well.
Another card that I think could potentially work really well in some of these aggro lists is actually Wildborn Preserver. I like this a lot. So it's 1 and a green. You have Flash Reach to 2/2. And then whenever a non-human creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can pay X. And then if you do, you put X +1/+1 counters on it. So you can play this in like big green red. So if you play a single, like you flash this out in your opponent's turn, you can then play, say, a Growth Chamber Guardian.
Whatever you want.
Right.
The implications of this card are profound. Finish your thought.
Yeah.
Let me.
So like on turn 3, you play a land, Growth Chamber Guardian. You pay 1, you put a +1/+1 counter on this. Now this thing now can swing in for 3 damage on the turn.
And there it is, and it flashes in.
Yep.
What this card is, and think about how deep an impact this card has. I've been thinking about this one a lot. I like green, okay? I like green a lot. This is a 2-drop that you can peel off the top of your library on turn 8, 9, 10.
And not feel bad about.
And it feels great. Yeah. In fact, it's awesome. It is an awesome card. I don't know that we need to get all crazy about the fact that this 2/2 is likely going to die to a lot of disfigures, right?
I mean, it's possible.
I mean, so does Steamkin.
Yeah.
So do all these other cards, right? I get it, but who's playing Disfigure right now? Nobody's playing Disfigure right now. But that one is a crazy one. Another green card. And I know it's really pushed. We've talked about it, but Questing Beast has to be talked about.
Yeah.
Haste, Vigilance,
so stupid.
Death Touch, 4/4, which means that you can swing in with it and not feel bad. It's just the pressure that it puts on planeswalkers specifically.
If you find that card for $5, buy a full playset right now.
If you find that card for $5, buy every single card they have, because that is maybe one of the best creatures ever printed. Vigilance, Death Touch, Haste can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Combat damage that would be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. And when it deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls.
And it's a 4/4.
And it affects the life total of the player and their planeswalkers.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about having to swing out at your opponent's planeswalkers. You only have to worry about swinging at them. And what's also really great about that damage prevention clause, where creatures you control, their damage can't be prevented, it stops protection.
That's right.
On blocked creatures.
That's right.
So let's say the creature has protection from green. Well, they block. Well, what protection does is it prevents the damage that would be dealt, but damage can't be prevented.
That's right.
So it happens, and it kills it.
And it kills it. It is insane. And another green card here that it's going to be effective in standard, but another green card here in Throne of Eldraine that is going to go deep. And think Allosaurus Rider with me here, but Once Upon a Time. This card for a colorless and a green at instant speed states if this spell is your first spell you've cast this game, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, which means all these crazy glass cannon decks with a card like that, you can keep no land hands. You can keep no land hands.
Absolutely. And especially that deck you were just mentioning in Modern, the Allosaurus Rider, you're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. You don't even have to have that in your opening hand because the likelihood that you're going to see it in your top 12 cards, pretty likely if you're running a full playset, which most of these decks are. So you cast, basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to cast their Allosaurus Rider, and then I believe on turn 2, they cast the Neoform. To get back, to get a Gristlebrand.
That's correct.
And win the game.
That's
so
right.
The whole point of the Once Upon a Time in Modern allows you to cast that for free if it's your first spell.
You can keep a no land hand for the combo. Stupid. It's very, very powerful. Okay. When you start talking about mono green Tron, it's not going to replace Ancient Stirrings.
No, I think you could still play maybe like 1 or 2 copies or something like that. But Ancient Stirrings is just a far better card.
Delve, Phyrexian Mana, Blazing Shoal, Frantic Surge. Now there's Once Upon a Time, right? Here they come. I really do think like Vizier, Druid decks, those kinds of things really get good. Ancient Stirrings doesn't get replaced in Tron because people are looking for Karn, Ugin, the O-Stone, the maps, the spheres, the stars, the whole thing.
And speaking of green, Yorvo, which is a giant noble.
I literally fell over.
So when it enters the battlefield, it enters with 4+1/+1 counters. It's a 0/0. Okay?
Yeah.
So 3 mana.
Yep.
3 green mana, 4/4, which is already amazing.
Yes.
It's already above the curve. And then whenever a green creature enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Just that alone is amazing.
It's amazing.
And then if that creature's power is greater than Yorvo's power, you put another +1/+1 counter on it.
Unbelievable.
This card is so good.
It's unbelievable to me.
Now, it is important to note, it doesn't have trample, it doesn't have evasion, but you can give it evasion. You can figure out a way around that.
No question about it.
But even just swinging in with I'm going to swing in with a 4/4, now it's a 5/5, now it's a 7/7, now it's an 8/8, now it's a 9/9. I mean, and then that's not even to mention, it doesn't say non-token. It just says green creature.
There's no exception. There's no exception that stops it from getting really ridiculous. Start thinking about Saprolings, folks.
Exactly, yeah.
Start thinking about Saprolings because that is...
Now, I think Saprolings are actually rotating out, though, aren't they? Because that was an excellent thing.
Just cheat. Just cheat and play Saprolings.
But Biomancer's, Biogenic Ooze.
Biogenic Ooze is perfect.
So this comes down turn 3. You can theoretically cast Biogenic Ooze on turn 4. That puts 2 +1/+1 counters on this guy.
It's got limited returns on the card on Yorvo because he's going to get bigger than your other creatures.
But there's still returns. Because even with Biogenic Ooze...
It gets the counter anyway.
Yeah, even with Biogenic Ooze, you can pay the 4 mana repeatedly to be able to put more counters on.
Think about this. Biogenic Ooze at the end of the turn that you cast Biogenic Ooze with a Yorvo in play is a 5/5. It's a 5/5. You have 2 5/5s for 5 mana with a Yorvo in play.
Yep.
It just happens. And dude, I love it. I love this card. And there's plenty more that we can sit here and hypothesis, but I think today we agreed was going to be a little bit of a short cast. Kind of talk through some brews, work through a couple things. The streams will continue as usual. I do want to throw a fresh reminder out there for our podcast listeners to please come join us Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the streams. We start the streams at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. That is the Chicago time on the world clock. Come join us there. As we hit 50 followers, the very next Monday, we are starting a weekly giveaway. And the more followers we have, the more support we have on the stream, the more that we will turn that support back in on the giveaways. And our goal is to eventually give away incredibly fantastic prizes on a weekly basis.
So we're looking at starting out giving away packs. We're looking at starting out giving away maybe random rares, random mythics from these sets. We're looking at if the support gets good enough, start giving away boxes, start giving away maybe moxes.
Reserve list stuff.
We've got a lot of things in the works that we want to be able to give away to you guys, but we need the support to coming out to our streams. Again, Saturday through Wednesday, 9 p.m. Central, which is that Chicago time. We want you guys to come out. And if we have 50 followers, but only 4 people in the stream, those 4 people are going to have the really good likelihood of winning one of these prizes.
If you see have on social media that we announce that is coming, that the giveaway is happening that Wednesday, and you show up that day and follow, you got a chance to win it.
Yep.
The longer you've been followed will add some weight to the giveaway, and I'll break down the entire giveaway cycle so people don't think it's rigged. But somebody who shows up that day and follows could technically win the giveaway, and it will continue every week, and we'll set new goals, etc. Join us on the Sideboard. It's an open Facebook group where Dboe and I talk to people and they don't talk to us.
Pretty much.
On Twitter, we are LandSayGo at LandSayGo1. We're there making people mad, and our sarcasm is lost on people every day on Twitter. So please join us there and give us some rub. And also, if this is something that you guys want us to stop doing, just let us know and we'll devote the time in a different direction. Well, I will. Dboe won't. Dboe will be sitting here talking to himself.
I'll be talking to myself in the corner. It happens on a daily basis anyways, so may as well just put a microphone in front of me.
The truth is that I'm just a figment of Dboe's imagination and another one of his personalities.
That is absolutely right.
Thanks for joining us today.
Again, guys, we're LandSayGo.
And deck lists coming again soon as rotation season rounds out. Remember, we can't do this
without you. Perpetuity.
Last word. When is that stupid trope gonna end?